Good morning. I am back with my very special, one of my most favorite people, Master Bob White. Thank you for agreeing to do this again.
No, I've been looking forward to it. Should be a lot of fun.
So you just amaze me, and I say that all the time, but it's true. You've been through just hell, literally hell and back. And after the last time I interviewed you, you ended up back in the hospital with sepsis.
Yes. And
you texted me from the hospital saying that you wanted to set up our next appointment for the following week. And I'm like, I'm a nurse, and I'm thinking, you've got sepsis. I'm thinking that's not a good idea. And I'm like, well, I don't want to tell you no, because I know better. So I thought, well, I'll just say we can go easy. Your response to me was easy is for other people.
Exactly.
So I love that. But I love your tips because for me, Kenpo, karate, martial arts has been so much more than a sport. It's been a metaphor for my life. And I know most people who practice martial arts, I'm not exactly sure why compared to other sports sometimes that's true. Maybe you can enlighten us as to why that might be true.
Well, there's a lot of carryovers. You know, that I think John Wooden said that sports don't necessarily develop character, but it certainly reveals it. So, I mean, there's so many correlations that we do in our athletic life that carry over into our everyday life.
It's so true. And I think with martial arts in particular, especially for women who maybe have been through a lot, martial arts is a very empowering sport. I mean, let's be honest. There's nothing that feels better than going out and hitting stuff. It just feels good. I call it therapy. If you've been through a lot in life and learning a skill where you are getting sort of that out and in a very positive way, learning a skill that's empowering, and it's very hard. It's a discipline. It's an art. It's fun. It's amazing.
Well, it is like life in so many ways because it's a reward for the effort that you put into it. If you actively pursue an improved lifestyle, just like you actively try to improve in karate, it's going to get reward for the time that you put in.
See? So well said. I love that. So I love what you have to say. And so because I love this idea of martial arts being such a great metaphor for life, tell us your top tips.
Well, basically, you know, when I first started coaching, I remembered coaches that I had had in the past and what type of coach that I responded to. And it was always a coach that took a personal interest in how I was doing. You know, there's that old saying, nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. And I think from a coaching relationship, that's so critical that you convey to your student that you really do have a concern for their progress and how they're doing. And it's all about service. What can you do to be in service to that particular student? And I think that they plug into that and they respond better to you.
It's so true, because I've had other coaches who they're more just on you and they have a different style.
Sure.
But when I came to you, I know I'm not even close to the level of some of the people that train here, but it's the way you coach and the way you point out what someone's doing right, but you still expect a lot. And so that expecting a lot, but pointing out what someone's doing well. And in what we do for parenting coaching, we call that being firm and kind.
Sure.
Always pointing out what you need to have done, what you want done, the expectation, but yet encouraging and pointing out the best.
Yeah, and it is like life. It's if half of knowing what you want is knowing what you have to give up to get it. And if you want a certain level of proficiency in martial arts, then there's some commitment of time and effort that are necessary to obtain those goals.
I love that. So your first tip is?
Well, I think more than anything else is you have to have a commitment to being the best instructor you can, and then have that in common with your student that they also have a commitment.
So it's a mutual commitment.
It has to be. And then when you get on the same page, then you're working together, which we'll cover a little bit later on. We talk about team effort, but it's like playing catch. I throw the ball to you and you throw the ball back to me. And when I come to lessons with you or any of my students, actually, I want to have a game plan because I'm committed to making that class as productive as possible.
I really like that. So I like that. I mean, that works for your job.
Certainly.
That works with your health. So I know a lot of people who go into their doctor and they're like, well, my doctor didn't do a good job of getting me well. But I like what you just said because it's a commitment on both sides.
It is.
So if you're a student at school, I mean, you've got to have your part in it.
Yes.
So I know you expect a lot out of your students. So,
well, if they want to get, and we make a deal, you know, we shake hands, it's kind of a contract. You want to get better, and they agree that they do want to get better, and now let's take the steps, but you have to be coachable.
Right.
And there has to be that mutual commitment. So that's why I have it right on the top of the list.
I love that. So what's the second one?
Communication. And communication is finding out how the person learns, find out what their goals are, find out, what they're doing outside of the studio to better their skills, or what's their lifestyle like. Are they really living a healthy lifestyle that's going to commit themselves or be able to kind of put 100% effort into improvement? And the communication is just, like I mentioned before, is throwing the ball back and forth so that you're able to find out where the student's at.
Right.
And then also, I want problems. When somebody doesn't understand something that I say, then I want to be in the solution. I want to be able to communicate well enough so that I can clarify what the point is, so that the student understands not only how to do it, but why they're doing it.
That's interesting, because that's something I always teach my daughter when I always tell her, if you want to stand out and be different, don't walk in to your teachers or to a coach with a problem and just whine about it. Walk in with a solution-minded mindset.
Yes.
With a solution-oriented mindset.
Well, and what a difference. And a lot of it is, there's a technique called reflective listening, because a lot of times when you talk to somebody, they're already thinking of what their response is, really, rather than really absorbing what it was that you said to them. So the communication skills on both parts are enhanced when there really is a listening to what the person is saying. So major part.
So what's the third one?
And I think the heart of all five, and that's trust. Because if there is no trust in any relationship, you have a failed relationship. But if you have the trust, you know the instructor has your best interests at heart, you know the student's committed to improvement, then you can build. But if you lose the trust, you're in trouble. If you lose the trust, it's very difficult to get it back. And trust is minor things like showing up on time for classes,
right,
or doing what you say you're going to do, or being able to convince the student by actions, not by words. It's more important what you do than what you say.
Right.
But have that consistency so that the trust is developed. And I think also trust is, how can I tell you to live a healthy lifestyle if I'm coming in looking like I've been 4 sheets to the wind the night before?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's trust. You have to have that believability so that the people will put their faith in you. And if that's betrayed, you're in trouble.
In what we do, we often say that if you don't live your message, you're a bad messenger.
Correct.
So, and people will not trust you.
They won't,
so,
and nor should they. You know, the idea is you betray the trust because you're doing something differently than you say.
And we often, with parenting, we often say kids don't do what you say, they do what you do.
Certainly.
So you can tell them all day long, but if you are, I often see this with, we want our kids to follow the rules and do all these things. We don't want them to do drugs. We don't want them to give in to peer pressure, but we give in to peer pressure constantly as adults.
Correct.
And it's so interesting. We use this language like, especially during the holidays, well, I just couldn't help it because it's the holidays. And so well, then why would you want your children to stand up to peer pressure? Because, what you say is, well, I didn't want to hurt people's feelings who cook stuff that I know I don't normally eat or that I'm allergic to, or that whatever it is. No. If you want your kids to stand up to peer pressure, you have to do the same.
Yeah.
So I like what you just said.
Yeah. Well, it's so true. Like, self-control is a typical thing. How can the parents expect their children to act right in school under pressure when they're on the freeway getting upset with somebody, yelling obscenities?
Uh-oh.
I mean, well, yeah, exactly.
I call it traffic Tourette's.
And that's another deal that we need to always discuss.
I'm guilty.
None of us get out of this deal being perfect. But,
right.
The idea is that desire for improvement.
Yeah.
Because nobody gets to be perfect, we don't have to be perfect. We
Right.
just have to have the effort to improve. But,
well,
yeah.
and I love what you just said, because I am guilty of that. I'm totally guilty of that. But it's one of the reasons that I say that you need to hang out with people that improve you.
Mm-hmm.
So hang out with people that are better than you are in a lot of areas, because I'm good at a lot of things. I'm not good at that. So I know that. So that's the thing where I like to hang out with people who help me improve.
But isn't that
as a
fun,
person.
the fact that you get to work on yourself?
Well, and you can admit what your faults are.
Correct. And then you go 3 weeks later on, you go, I've been pretty good these 3. That's an
Right.
empowering thing when you realize that you're getting a reward for the effort
Right,
that
and
you
you
put
know
in.
your weaknesses, and it's constantly trying to improve them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I'll make a quick story. John Wooden riding down the road with a friend of his, and he told him that he loved him. And the guy, that's not John Wooden, that's not how he is. So they pulled over on the side of the road, and John Wooden goes, he said, have I ever told you that I love you? And the guy goes, no, you never have, but I can't tell you how much it means to me. And Coach Wooden goes, yeah, it's something I'm working on. And he was 98 years old at the time.
Yeah.
But isn't that great? I mean, working on yourself and trying to make yourself a better person, no matter where we're at on our age, is it's fun. Makes life enjoyable.
I love it. What's the fourth one?
Preparation. And preparation, it's that delayed gratification. As an example, if in karate, if you get hit in the stomach real hard, chances are you get the wind knocked out of you. But all of those setups that you have done before that have laid the groundwork for you being able to take this terrible shot to the stomach. But the idea is, in preparation for a class, is go in with a lesson plan. You want to live happy, joyous, and free, then take all of those steps by preparing and living on a day-to-day basis those things that will enhance that opportunity.
Speaking of which, my black belt test. So, a lot of people think that you prepare for a few months for black belt tests. Well, those of us who have taken one of those tests know that that's not true.
Yes.
It basically was 7 years. So it was 7 years of learning and growing and whatever. But the actual test, I knew I was older than most people taking that test. So I knew that I had to change my way of preparing. Some of these kids preparing, I mean, they work really hard physically. I had to work harder mentally. So you have to know yourself, I think, and prepare accordingly. So I did a lot of mental preparation. I did a lot of visualization, meditation, those types of things. I did a lot of nutritional preparation, like those kinds of things, as well as the physical stuff. But I didn't want to overtrain physically so that I got hurt. I still got hurt, but it's, I didn't get hurt as badly as I may have. So knowing yourself and knowing how to prepare is probably really important.
Well, it is. And then knowing yourself, knowing how to prepare, and part of that preparation is the interaction with people that have been in those steps before.
Yes, you really help. I mean, of course, you helped me tremendously. You're my coach and you're a master. But it's one thing because I wrote my thesis on the Brain Warrior's Way and applied it to health. And one thing that I really pointed out was I'd have never gotten my black belt. It would have never happened. This school, it's hard. The test is hard. It's brutal. But I made it doable. And I succeeded because I hung out with people that I found the people that I respected the most, that I knew worked the hardest, that had a great success record, Andrea Pfeffer and like all these people. And I'm like, please help me. So you build your community and you hang out with black belts. You got to hang out with people who have done it, who have been on that road.
Well, and it's such a critical aspect, and really, which is the fifth thing on the list, and that's team effort. And the team is when everybody is working together. Right. The coach's job, a great definition of coaching is to take somebody from an existing state to a desired state. Well, obviously our goal was to take you to the level of black belt. And you were receptive, you listened.
Oh, I was nervous.
Well, of course you were.
I was not all that receptive initially.
No, well, anything of great value is difficult, and your test was difficult, and you wouldn't have wanted it any other way.
Nope.
But that's the way it is. But when you work out with people that are on the same page as you, that they have your interest at heart, and they can share their experience, strength, and hope with you, that what they went through, it makes your journey a little bit more educated. It's not that it's ever easy, but it certainly makes it where you're better prepared because you've had an opportunity to get some feedback from people.
One thing I love, so I took Chloe out this weekend on this survival training, and it was way out of my comfort zone. One of the reasons I wanted to do it was because it was way out of my comfort zone. My black belt test was way out of my comfort zone. And people often ask me, why do you train in karate? Why would you, do this survival course? Why do you do a lot of the things you do that are not sort of the, princess life that, maybe some of us could do if we wanted to set our lives up easier.
Sure.
And I'm always doing things that are really uncomfortable. And it's, quite honestly, it's because the minute I feel afraid of something or uncomfortable about it, there's something built in within me as a result of, like you, suffering from pretty significant health issues in the past, and also some other psychological issues from my youth, where I don't like that feeling of being uncomfortable or being afraid.
Yeah.
I don't like it. It's repulsive to me, that feeling of being a victim of any kind. So I immediately then do this, in Viktor Frankl's book, he talks a lot, Man's Search for Meaning, he talks a lot about being counterphobic, and he says that I do not need to tolerate certain parts of myself, and I love that. So that's why I love this weekend that I went out with Chloe and we did the survival training, and it was really hard. No shower for 3 days, up high in the mountains, and it was a hard training. And basically learning to survive with minimal amount of anything. And everything you just talked about, all of these tips, was interesting. It was taught by a lot of ex-military. So like Marine, and there was also a firefighter, and there was Air Force guy. And so what I love is they actually talked about a lot of these tips. So the teamwork, the communication, you know, because I mean, if you're a Marine and you're, you know, one of them actually went through severe trauma, watched his two best friends die, and he's the only one that walked away, and he walked away with a lot of trauma. He wouldn't have. And those guys don't go through what they go through without going through the exact tips you just talked about. The teamwork, the planning, you know, the communication. Exactly. They can't do it without those things. You can't do anything worthwhile in life with a group of people and succeed if you don't have this plan.
Very true. Very true.
So, and that's what I learned with Chloe. We bonded. No phones. It was just like, you know, we made our plan work. We created this plan and we made it work.
But isn't it fun to get involved in something like this and realize the crossover to everyday life? Everyday life. Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's what martial arts are, certainly. It's that opportunity to see the things that go on in the studio and how it carries over to things that you're dealing with every day.
And you, before we got on here, you said that teamwork was the heart of this, and you mentioned that there's a lot more to teamwork.
Well, teamwork is that interaction. You know, as you mentioned earlier, Tana, who you spend your time with is critical. And what an influence, or whatever influence from an instructor standpoint, whatever influence you think you have, multiply that by 10.
Right.
Because everything that you do, especially with children, they're watching you, and you better have your game face on, and you better be able to conduct yourself in a manner in which you want people to emulate.
And authenticity, I think, is really important.
Well, it is. It is. You know, it's such a great thing, but the idea of being around positive people and how they handle adversity. How do they handle it? Do they panic? Do they cower? You just mentioned that you don't like uncomfortable things, but immediately when I was thinking of you and dealing with uncomfortable things, you're in the solution. If
Right.
it's uncomfortable, I want to go in and I want to address this so it ceases to become a problem.
Right.
And as we both know, your projections are normally 10 times greater than reality.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So the biggest thing I learned in my black belt test, biggest lesson I learned going through that process. So, you know, being wounded, getting hurt, spraining my hand, having 2 fractures in my foot, hurting my ribs, like all of those things, the biggest lesson I learned was that my fear of getting hurt was so much bigger than actually getting hurt.
Always.
Because women are so terrified of being hurt, of having something happen to them, and they think, and that's why they freeze a lot of times.
Yeah.
So when someone, you know, I was attacked when I was 15, that fear of being hurt, of having a broken bone or someone, you know, hurting you somehow, causes you to react in a very negative way, when the fact is being hurt isn't nearly as bad as the fear of being hurt.
Correct.
That was the big lesson. I actually kept going when it happened.
Yes.
It wasn't until I got home that I was like, I think there's a problem here. So, you know, that was a huge lesson for me.
Well, and a lesson for everybody. You know, there's an old saying about, you know, how long does it take an average person to get a black belt? And as you know, the answer is the average person doesn't get a black belt. So it does take an exceptional person that has a drive and a desire to step outside the box. And, you know, you certainly did that.
And that lesson, though, carries over to everything in life.
Well, it does. I mean, if you look at, we've had so many years, you know, we've been here for a long time, you know, close to 50 years of teaching. So many times we've seen children that have reached a high level of proficiency and have it carried over into their adult life, and they become successful at what they do because they're problem solvers. They're not overcome or overwhelmed by tragedies. You know, they're able to deal with it so much better.
Yeah.
And as a direct result of their martial art. And we both know being able to try to deal with the fear of physical confrontation makes the other things that come across your plate so much easier to fear or to handle.
And if I could give something that worked for me, so when you talk about, you know, this preparation part of I think it's preparation and trust. When I was going through something, you know, it was scary for me. The day of my black belt test was sort of scary. So I did a lot of visualization and preparation ahead of time in my own head. And, you know, I knew that when I came in that day, there was going to be a lot of chatter, a lot of positive talk, a lot of negative talk, whatever it was, there was going to be a lot of talk around me. And I didn't want to focus on that at all. So I set it up in my head ahead of time what I was going to focus on. So I was going to focus completely on the one positive thing I knew that would get me through, and that was your voice. You're my coach. I knew you wanted me to succeed. So I was going to focus on nothing other than the sound of your voice.
Right.
And focus on you. Whenever I started to feel that, I was going to focus on that one thing. And the other thing I did was I had a picture in my head, and I told because it's easy to get a picture in your head of all of the bad things that can happen.
Sure.
And I told myself going in, there's only one way I'm coming out of, well, could be one of two ways I'm coming out of here. It's either going to be on a stretcher or with black belt. But there was no way I was quitting.
Horizontal or the black belt. Good.
That's it. So if I had a broken hand, I was going to keep going. If I had whatever it was, unless you guys took me out on a stretcher, I was going out on a stretcher or with a black belt. Because you have to tell that's that commitment part of it.
Yes. Well, and that carries over under the terrible situation of an attack. There is no second place.
You can't stop.
You cannot stop.
I've been attacked. You can't stop.
Yeah.
I didn't get raped because I didn't have any training. I just went wild.
Yeah.
I went psycho. And that wasn't the best thing. Being trained is better. But in the moment, that's all I had.
Yeah. Being trained is better, but the reality of it is, as we both know,
it was better than the alternative.
yeah, they're not expecting somebody to fight back. In fact, statistics prove that if somebody fights back, they have a much better chance of escaping than somebody that is submissive.
Right.
That's just statistically is being reinforced all the time.
Right. So is there anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I just think that anything that you do, any athletics or anything, job or whatever, is be committed to doing the best you possibly can. Listen to the coaches or listen to your boss. Find out exactly what, communicate with him, find out what he expects or she expects from you. Try to develop those relationships with trust. Be prepared, be prepared all the time, and get with people of like minds so that you can interact with them and think of ways to improve your skills.
I agree.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't work the first time, it's not an excuse to quit.
Analyze
what you did wrong, go back, look at that list. I love that list you came up with. Check it out and go, which part didn't work? But quitting isn't an option.
Correct. Yeah, if you do these constant inventories on your performance and then work on the areas that need to improve, then you're actively involved in making yourself better. And that in itself is very empowering.
Right.
Knowing that you're an active participant in improvement.
And one of the things we tell our people in our health coaching is there is no failing, there's only falling. And I learned that here because I'm a perfectionist like a lot of women are, and if we fall, we consider that failing and we want to run away. And that's in karate, it's one of the big lessons I learned was, oh, falling is normal. It's a normal part of what we do here. It's like, oh, okay, well, figure out what you did that got you knocked down or got you hit and figure out how to like maybe do it better the next time. That's just a normal part of what you do here.
Certainly.
So it's not failing, it's just falling. As long as you get back up, you didn't fail. And so that's why I like that. That's why I say go back and analyze it. If it didn't work, figure out what you did, go back, go through the list. But especially with your health or with a job or with anything in life, failing's not an option.
No, it isn't.
So,
when I had the cancer, what am I going to do?
See?
Fail at that?
Exactly.
So you just do with the next indicated steps, and you work on the solution. You do what you can do.
You are truly one of my very favorite
All right,
people
thank you, Tana.
in the whole world.
All right, thoroughly enjoyed my time with you as always.
Thank you for that.
Yep.
Have a great day.